Hello everyone and welcome back to the final chicane with me, Kristen Boylan. The Imola weekend is done. Well, it was an interesting one. A bit of mixed feelings about the whole weekend in general, a bit to talk about. Obviously the first time we've raced at Imola since 2022, so it was nice to get back there. But a lot to talk about. An interesting enough race, maybe not the most interesting race we've seen this year, but still, we have a lot to discuss, so let's get into it. But first, obviously, like always, we have the riddle of the week. This riddle of the week, I find that I've done it very poetically, if that makes sense. It's long. They haven't been long in quite a while, so I did a nice long one, and I tried to make it a little poetic. So let's see if you get it right. This will test your knowledge on Formula One, I think. Here it is. In a city famed for sleek designs, from carriages to race car lines, I, from a family in the motor game, with roaring engines, etched my name. Born to Turin's noble crest, driving, my passion was expressed. With unmatched style, I took the lead in Alfa Romeo's racing steed. From crashing starts to glorious wins, through pain and peril, I danced with sins. A world champion, the first to grace Formula One's season race. Beyond the track, I held another flame, a scholar, a lawyer, not just a name. In the roar of engines, I found my acclaim, a life well lived in F1 fame. So, who am I? Like always, I will tell you the answer and a story behind the person at the end of today's episode. But until then, comment your guesses and who you think it is below. Okay, let's get into the race weekend then. We do usually start with news and media. We have actually a bit less media news than we usually do this weekend. There wasn't too much to come out still. It's Formula One. There always is something. And I guess the main talking point of the weekend was probably Alex Albon re-signing with Williams on a multi-year contract. The teams definitely sort of seem to have a habit of not telling anyone how long these contracts are. Multi-year though, longer than 1 year. I myself would guess until 2027 maybe would the contract be. It's an interesting move from Alex, I think, signing a multi-year contract and especially signing it this early into the year. I'm pretty sure he has a contract for next year, but with the uncertainty around Mercedes' second seat to stay with Williams might have been a risky sort of move. But I think Alex does probably know what he's doing. I think obviously we don't know who's in that Mercedes seat. It's looking likely that it might be a rookie. There hasn't been much word about Carlos, I don't think. I can't see Carlos in it. I think he is setting his sights somewhere else, but I'm not too sure where, to be honest. Everything is still up in the air for Carlos. Obviously there was a bit of word about Kimi Antonelli, who did obviously his practices. He's not old enough to take the Williams seat this year. That was the whole thing. I don't think anything is going to come out of that, if that's what we were talking about last week or the week before. Over everything, it does show Alex's dedication to Williams. Obviously, he knows more about what's going on behind the scenes. He's the one interacting with the team, with the engineers, with everyone. So he obviously knows something that we might not know. And he has faith in Williams, which is encouraging for us as well. Because I think most Formula One fans want to see Williams back up there. Williams doing well, not points being its biggest achievement. You know, I'd love to see Williams fighting for podiums again, but I don't know if that's going to happen in the next few years. It would be great if it did. But I think it was nice to see Alex's dedication to the team, is what I'm saying, basically. Anyway, there was really not that much other news this week, was there? Unless I missed something. I know it came out that Adrian Newey sort of confirmed that he is going to think about going to another team. His manager sort of let something slip. He was like, oh, when you're working with Zach, I can't remember his exact words, but he was sitting beside Adrian Newey. He was like, oh, like, if you're working with Zach Brown, obviously McLaren CEO, and he was like, or whoever you go to, whatever, which was an interesting sort of moment. Did he give something away about there being possible McLaren working relationship there? I don't know. I know that Adrian Newey is friends with Zach Brown, but maybe that's all. Maybe that's all it is. I'm sure nothing is confirmed yet or anything like that. I do see him taking a bit of a break. I think he should take a break. But it is also a bit odd that all of these, he's not leaving Formula One. But I do think he might want to just step back a little for a little bit. I feel like rumours can just get exhausting though. So I probably just will stop talking about Adrian Newey now until some more solid evidence comes out about whatever is happening next year. I'm also in a new location if you're watching on video. I think this is the place I actually recorded my first ever podcast episode. I can't remember because I was still trying to figure out what the best room to film it is. And I'm trying out this one this week. So let me know if you like it. What else happened aside from racing this weekend? Sebastian Vettel's return to the paddock, best part of the year so far, to be honest. Seb obviously had huge admiration for Senna, so this week in Imola he was honouring Senna all weekend with lots of different stuff. On Media Day on the Thursday, he gave every single driver a personalised shirt with their number on it, and it was a Brazil shirt for Senna. And they also all had wristbands, I think, for Roland Ratzenberger. And yeah, I talked on TikTok about this and how there was two drivers not wearing the shirts, Max and Valtteri. And I just found out yesterday that the reason that they weren't wearing their shirts is because they got stolen before they were even given to the two. Someone obviously stole it from Seb, so they had no choice but to not wear a shirt. And I feel bad because everyone was sort of slating them, even though you should never be forced to wear a shirt for anyone. But one thing that is clear is that when Sebastian Vettel is at the paddock, the rest of the grid are gonna show up for sure. Always. We've seen it before for Seb's Beehive project. And yeah, they all did a little run for Senna and Roland afterwards in the rain. It was raining. Seb had a little speech, and I think there was this little wall that they could all ride on. So it was a nice memory of Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger. It was 30 years a few weeks ago since they died both at Imola during the Imola weekend. And then Seb drove Senna's McLaren on the Sunday, I think, or was it the Saturday? I'm not sure if it was the Sunday or the Saturday, but that was very emotional for him. He got out of the car and he got on his knees and was bowing and, what's the word called? I guess just bowing and moving his arms up and down, whatever that's called, to the car afterwards. And his dad was there. His dad was really emotional watching him drive Senna's car. Definitely an emotional thing because of the racer Senna was and his incredible achievements in Formula One and his incredible addition to the sport itself. Roland Ratzenberger is often overlooked as well, but of course his life was just as important, and it was nice to also see him appreciated and remembered this weekend. Some of the cars had little stickers for Ratzenberger on the car, the Austria flag, and Seb had like half of his helmet Brazil flag, half of his helmet the Austria flag. Roland was Austrian if you weren't sure. So they were just some nice tributes this weekend, I think. Also, my other favourite part that has nothing to do with racing this weekend was the new addition to the paddock in the form of a golden dachshund, I think is the breed. Charles Leclerc's little puppy, Leo is his name, and he was in the paddock this weekend. I'd say he was kept indoors away from the sound. I don't think he'd want a dog. I know Lewis has brought in his dogs before, but I don't think he'd want a dog without headphones at the noise of that track. But it was very cute to see him there. I saw a video, I think Alexandra was walking Leo, and Leo just decided he didn't want to walk anymore and just lie down in the middle of the paddock, so she had to pick him up and carry him. I love to see a dog in the paddock, and it's quite lucky I wasn't at the paddock this weekend, or not that I've ever been, because I would just be at that dog. I would just be with that dog the entire weekend, as a lot of people seem to be. That dog got more attention than any of the drivers this weekend, to be honest. It was a couple of the team's home race. It was Visa Cash App or B's home race and one of Ferrari's home race. To be honest, I would consider Monza more of a Ferrari home race, and I'd give Imola to Visa Cash App or B because their headquarters, if you'll call it that, is like right beside the track, to be honest. It's not far away at all. And the entire team, I think, at the garage was filling out one of the grandstands, which was nice for the team. I know Daniel and Yuki wanted to do well and bring home some points in honour of the team and at the team's home race. And we've no Italian drivers on the grid anymore. I think the last one must have been Antonio Giovinazzi. Daniel is half Italian, or some part Italian. I think his dad might be half Italian. So he's the closest we've got. And also, the discussions on Twitter last week about how Daniel shouldn't be considered Italian is so strange. People find anything to complain about. He changed his second name. The pronunciation is obviously Ricciardo, because it's an Italian second name. He changed it to Riccardo when he was like living in Australia or whatever. So, because it was easier to pronounce, I guess, for people. And now he's not Italian anymore, apparently. That's just the state of Formula 1 these days, to be honest. That is all the media news I can think of. Maybe there was something really important that I just forgot to talk about, but I don't know. So we're just going to get into the racing of it all. FP1, FP2, FP3, it was looking bad for Red Bull. Or for Max, at least. It wasn't looking great. Max was quite wobbly even doing his laps. It wasn't just that the car was slow or anything. It was that the drivers were actually struggling. Max did look like he was struggling at the start of the weekend. He went off a few times. The car got quite a few bumps going over some of the new curbs that were put in. And yeah, there were quite a few new curbs being put in Imola. That's like the only change that's like ever been made to the track, I think, is the curbs. There was also quite a lot of wind, so that could have been part of it as well. But the drivers were struggling during all FPs. During all free practices, they were struggling. So I thought things might change up this weekend. They didn't change up immensely, but there was definitely a change. Alex DNF'd in practice 1. I think his car just went over a curb a little heavily and it just shut off. It just stopped driving. Probably what I would do if I was a car. Speaking of Williams, actually, James basically confirmed that Logan's seat isn't safe for next year, which him saying that sort of leads me to believe like he's gone. He said he needs to really up his game if he's going to keep his seat. A team boss sort of publicly saying that, I don't think I'll ever be completely on board with, because, you know, Logan gets that negativity from the media, from the entire paddock. I think the last person who needs to sort of be saying that to the media is your team principal. I'm sure Logan has been told this behind closed doors already, but I guess he's asked quite a lot and he probably thought it would just be best to be honest. Obviously that's going to put a lot of pressure on Logan. I know he's probably not going through too great of a time right now, which can be hard. I think Formula 1 is a very tough sport to be a part of, and it's never nice to see a driver potentially lose their seat and you can see that they're putting everything into it, because you can see Logan's putting everything he can into it, but there's just too many mistakes. There's just not enough pace there, I guess. Obviously he hasn't been in Formula 1 too long, it's only his second year, but at the end of the day, I guess it's a tough sport and Williams need to do what's best for the team. But I'd love to see Logan be able to turn it around. There is a lot of interest in that second Williams seat though. Bottas was seen leaving the Williams garage this weekend. He didn't really comment too much about it. I think he might have just said, oh, just friendly chats, whatever. Obviously he has that relationship with James Vowles, who used to be his engineer in Mercedes. And Pierre has also sort of been in talks, apparently, about the Williams seat. So I'm interested to know who you think, if it was between those two, who do you think would be more deserving of the Williams seat? Because we know that one of the Sauber drivers are leaving. We don't know which one. But also at the current place that Williams are, does that not seem to be a step down from Alpine? Because I know Alpine are struggling as well, but they seem to be just about in line with Williams. Is this indication that Alpine are just going to go downhill more if Pierre is looking to go to Williams instead? Or maybe that Williams are just going to make a big jump. It's interesting to think about, to talk about. It would be interesting to see. Alpine have had a strange road because they were quite strong when they were Renault. Obviously, I know the whole team has changed since then, but they've gone quite a path, and I think if they want to stay as a good team and in Formula One, there's some improvements that are going to be made. Improvements that are going to need to be made. The last thing that they need is a driver choosing to leave to go to a team that right now seems slightly worse, because that just shows the lack of commitment or belief, I guess, which isn't anything negative on Pierre. It's his career, you know. It's his career and he can't be trapped in a team that's not giving him much. Or maybe he feels like the team might be prioritizing a Spinock on. It could be anything. We really don't know. It could be anything. You know who was looking really well this weekend? Yuki. He was, P3, I think, in FP2. I was so excited about that. I was so excited to maybe see if he could do something incredible at not his home race, but his team's home race. It would have been nice. He's obviously been looking strong all weekend, or looking strong all season. He's had a few dips in places, and Daniel has had a few ups in places as well. And he didn't have a bad weekend, but it just probably wasn't as good as he was hoping, and the team were maybe hoping for. FP3, a couple of crashes, Perez and Alonso, quite a big one for Alonso, which that showcased what is the rest of his weekend was going to be like. Not a great weekend from Alonso, unfortunately, at all. He struggled throughout it. Obviously, Perez having that little off as well. Not a great thing. Also, that last minute dash just to get the laps in. I know a few drivers were obviously just trying to test a new setup or whatever, so they wanted to get out, so they were allowed to do a bit of a fast lap. Quite a few didn't actually make it to the line in time. I know Kevin, Magnussen and Daniel and Yuki didn't. And then there was actually quite a dangerous impeding by Daniel to Magnussen, where Daniel was on a fast lap to try his new flaps that they added to the car. And then obviously he didn't make it to the lap. He didn't make it to the line in time. So he pulled out of the fast lap after just like doing one sector with the new flaps. And he was side by side with Yuki when Magnussen, who was behind him, also didn't make it to the line. So they assumed no one would be doing fast laps. So the team didn't warn him of anything. And since there was so many of those sort of like different reasons for the impeding, Daniel, I think he only got like a 5,000 fine for the team or something like that, which was probably quite a relief because he qualified in Q3 for the first time this year, which is insane. I did not realise Daniel had not got into Q3 yet. I think it's because of how good he's been doing in the sprints, and they're not actually counted. The sprint qualifyings aren't actually counted because P4 in the sprint qualifying and not making it into Q3. So he said that he's quite sad actually to hear that it's the first time he got into Q3, because obviously he didn't even register that. He hasn't got into Q3 for an official Grand Prix weekend, but he did get into it this weekend. But yeah, I'm sure Magnussen was gulping a little when he heard he was being called to the stewards, because obviously one more incident and he's basically gone for a race. I still haven't seen when the first of his penalty points start to expire, so if anyone knows, let me know. But I would say even if like some do expire, it's just so easy to pick up penalty points. Like, it's not even for crashing or impeding, it's for, speeding in the pit lane, track limits, like whatever it is, it's so easy. So I think it is very likely that Magnussen will be out for a race. He's in the Haas, and I guess Ollie Behrman would be his replacement. Not that I want that for Magnussen, but I do think it's quite likely. But to be fair, I thought it was likely that Pierre would gain some more penalty points a couple of years back, and he didn't. He kept it clean for the last few races, so who knows. Quali, Alonso out straight away. Logan got his time deleted, so he was out again. The last thing he needed, especially not just to be fast enough, but he wasn't fast enough anyway, but then he also got his time deleted, like a knock after knock to Logan. I'm sure his confidence isn't too great right now. So I really hope he gets a chance to prove himself and he gets a good run in the next couple of races. I guess Monaco is not the greatest race for the slower cars on the grid either, so might be a painful race for Williams next week as well. Seba's out, Perez out in Q2. Just about Daniel Ricciardo knocked him out. He was a bit uneasy over the curbs, obviously slowed him down a bit. So yeah, Daniel Ricciardo just managed to stay into Q3, which unfortunately did push Perez out, sort of big deal, both Orbeez and Haas are qualifying at the Red Bull. But yeah, it was just quite a messy lap from Perez. He knew that anyway. And he made some moves on the Sunday race. Hulk P10, also, if you didn't know, Nico Hülkenberg's first time ever racing at Imola in anything. He's never raced at Imola before. The only driver to never have. Obviously his gap from Formula 1 when he wasn't a driver was when everyone else was racing at Imola. So yeah, his first time racing, and he made it into Q3. His teammate didn't again. Hülkenberg, I say this every episode, and I'm pretty sure I say this every episode last week as well. But Hülkenberg is just on something new. I struggle to say his name sometimes. Hülkenberg. There we go. Nico. How does Daniel say it? Nico Hülkenberg. You have to do the shoulders. Nico Hülkenberg. Something like that, I think. I have to say that in my head every time I try to say his name. Lewis P8. Mercedes. Not a great weekend for Mercedes, to be honest. They're still quite a bit behind the leaders. They're quite a bit behind Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari. They're closer to Aston Martin, which I think in my predictions, in my first ever podcast episode of the season, in my predictions I said that Mercedes would be more of a challenge to Aston Martin. I think I said that. Unless I said McLaren, which I would have been wrong about. One thing I was wrong about actually was I said Oscar would get his first win before Lando. And I'm quite happy to be wrong about that because, I mean, everyone wanted to see Lando win. Just wanted to correct myself there on my predictions. I love doing predictions at the start of the season though, because it's funny to see how things work out. I think I was very optimistic about Orb as well in my predictions. But you know, there's still 17 races to go or something like that. There is time. There's plenty of time. And then, yeah, Q3 came. As I said, Max throwing up those purple sectors. Oscar Piastri also going purple everywhere. He was having a great qualifying session. Oscar is fast. Oscar is so fast. He, I think, is one of the best drivers on the grid, without a doubt. He's incredible. And it's only his second year in Formula 1, and he's already challenging Lando very well. I know Lando probably keeps it together a little more than Oscar does, but that comes with experience. So Oscar, great weekend. Lando P3, of course. Obviously, we know how Lando's weekend went. Very, very good weekend. Very good qualifying from Lando as well. But Max just pulled it together slightly more. There was very little in it even. But unfortunately, Oscar did get his grid penalty, pushing him back, I think, to P5 or P6. He impeded Magnussen. He wasn't told Magnussen was there, whatever. And yeah, it did get him a 3-place grid penalty. So Magnussen was actually involved. He was at the stewards quite a lot this week, and none of it was his fault. So well done, Magnussen. Good job. The race. We're already at the race. We're moving quite fast through this episode. I guess there's a little less to talk about this week, but a shorter episode would be nice, I think. A lot of different strategies. Strategies was the main reason for people to do well and people to do bad at this race. And I think a lot of the teams messed up the strategy this week, from my unprofessional, I know nothing opinion. And I think the biggest fumble of strategy was Orby, probably, with Daniel. Not a big fumble with Yuki, but I think pitting Daniel, who's quite good at managing tyres, on lap 11 or lap 12, I think, very early compared to his competitors like Stroll and Magnussen. I think one of them might have been on hards actually. Daniel was on mediums, but I'm pretty sure Stroll might have been on mediums as well. He was let back in. He had a bit of clean air, but obviously that clean air went when he caught up with the slower car of Logan and he couldn't make moves. The Orby is not good at overtaking in dirty air, but also Imola is like a Monaco. It is not a good track for overtaking at all if you're in a slower car. Actually, no matter what car you're in, it's just not a great track for overtaking. So as soon as he was pitted back out, quite a bit behind Yuki and Hülkenberg, he really had no chance, and obviously his tyres were completely gone by the end of it. So that was Daniel's weekend over. Yuki managed to make it P10. Yeah, Yuki managed P10, which was actually quite impressive. The strategy worked a bit better for him, whereas to get him out in front of the cars that he was fighting. But again, his tyres were just gone by the end of it, and yeah, he didn't have to do much defending right at the end, but also he wasn't able to attempt to overtake. Obviously Stroll got past him. He he couldn't really do much. Neither the Orbeez did much. And you know what? There's usually like 100% chance of a safety car at Imola. So obviously their thoughts were that there would be a safety car. And there wasn't. So anyone who pitted early was just sort of lost for the rest of the race. Lance Stroll was on those mediums forever. He managed those tyres so well. He was so impressive during the race. He had an incredible race, actually. I mean, the results probably didn't showcase it. I think he finished P9, but he started quite a bit back, and the Orbeez seemed to be faster than the Aston Martin all weekend. So a good strategy call, but mainly good tyre managing from Lance. I think he should be happy with that weekend. I don't think you could really fault him for that. That weekend he had great long run speed as well. He was making the overtakes. He made a couple of overtakes as well. So good job, Lance Stroll. Good job. And no incidents either. He kept it clean all weekend. There was very little action during the race. It wasn't the most exciting race in the world. It was a little boring. And the end was a little bit more exciting, but I feel like we sort of knew Max would have held on to it. I mean, okay, I didn't find the race boring, but it was just more boring than some of the other ones, because I don't know. I don't think I've ever found a Formula 1 race boring, to be honest. I do be quite busy during the races. I check all of the timings. I'm looking at everyone's different timing screens, different driver profiles, different, what's the word I'm looking for? Cameras. The different camera angles. I've quite a lot to look at during the race. I'm honestly sort of act like a strategist or an analysis just by myself. So yeah, in that way I don't find it that boring, because there's always something to do. But just action-wise, not too much action. The mediums were good. Max pulled away on the mediums, but then he seemed to struggle a bit on the hard. He lost that pace a little bit. And McLaren were sort of the opposite. McLaren then began to pull away on the hards. They were using the hards to the max. They were mining the tyres, but they were also getting the speed out of them. I know Lando was struggling a bit. We'll talk about Oscar first. Obviously, Oscar was stuck with the Ferrari for quite a while again. I'm not sure how the relationship between Carlos and Oscar is, but I think they're sort of sick of seeing each other on track. I would be by now anyway. Yeah, not too much of a race from Oscar, unfortunately. Just like I said, Imola, it's impossible to overtake on. Not impossible if you're on a lot better tyres, but if you're on the same tyres as a car that you're like similar speeds with, then you're not going to overtake. It's just a little hard. And obviously Lando then was susceptible to an overtake from Charles in P3, and Lando just managed to pull away. I guess the Ferrari's tyres were sort of going again, while Lando's, I guess, were managed a little better. That sort of came out of nowhere though, Lando sort of sneaking up on Max. Hamilton went off and Perez went off. I know they were saying in the cool down room that Lando was hoping it was Max who went off. Yeah, two cars we don't see go off too often. But Perez then pitted and he was rapid on the mediums. He just made his way through the slower cars, through the cars on older tyres like the Orbeez and the Aston Martin, and he did quite well to finish in the top 10. To finish quite in the middle of the top 10 after not making it into the top 10 for the race. Sargent finished P17, not bad. He had an overtake on Bottas. Actually, Bottas sort of fell at the end of the race, and I never really saw what happened with that. Bottas fell down quite a few places, so if anyone knows what happened with that, let me know. But yeah, Logan finished P17. Not great. Could be worse. He finished the race. Alex retired. Alonso retired. Russell's tyres were sort of going. He was going to be a risk to Perez, so he ended up boxing. And he was quite fast on the tyres, but he couldn't overtake Lewis at the end. There was a bit of drama going on there, actually, with the team radios. And George wanted to make sure that he would be let past if he, gave way to Lewis when he boxed. And Mercedes were like, no, you'll have to overtake him yourself. We're not going to do anything, blah blah blah. Right decision, to be fair. Not much of a race from either of the Mercedes either. Sainz P5, Piastri P4, George fastest lap on his tyres, and Lando obviously was catching up with Max towards the end. He got close. Lando got close to Max, but then during that one lap that they were actually showing of him, he went very wobbly on it. He went a bit wide. He wasn't completely on the racing line when he needed to be. Not a great lap from him. but then he caught up again. Let's say there were 5 more laps of the race. I am not certain Lando would have won, because not only is it a hard track to overtake on, Max was also slowly beginning to build speed again. But I would have loved so much to see some actual fighting between Max and Lando, with neither of them having any problems, both of them fast, both of them trying to hold on to P1. That would have been so exciting to watch. I don't know if Lando would have won. It's a very could have, should have, would have. Anyway, he didn't win. Max won. There was that set amount of laps and Max held on to it, and a very deserved win for Max. Also, throughout the whole weekend, Max sounded a lot more enthusiastic on the radio when he got pole and when he won, which is nice because it shows that this stuff means like a lot more when he has to work for it, if that makes sense. Like, obviously it always means a lot to him, but obviously when he's challenging Lando and when he's challenging the Ferraris and when it's not certain that he's going to do well, it obviously would mean that bit more. So I really hope that continues. I think Lando and Oscar and of course the Ferraris, I think they're all going to be able to start challenging Max more, but more specifically with my eyes on McLaren. I think they're one to watch, both of them as well. I would love to see an Oscar Max battle really bad. I feel like I haven't been able to see that big challenge with Oscar yet, and I really want to see how he copes being put up against Max. So let's make that happen. I want to see that happen next race. That's all the notes I took on the race. I'm trying to figure out who to support because I'm going to the Barcelona Grand Prix and I want to support like random teams because I don't really have favourites. I just support everyone. I love everyone. So, but I think I want to support Visa Caja Borbi and Ferrari, obviously. Just at this race particularly. I think I'll be like, I'm not going to buy any merch from any of the teams, but I might make some because I just sort of do that for the Grand Prix that I've gone to. I don't think I've ever bought merch for a Grand Prix that I've went to. I mean, I had some already, but usually I just like make something. I sewed a little honey badger onto a hat because I wanted to support Daniel in Monza, and then he broke his hand and he didn't actually go to Monza, which was so great. But yeah, who knows? Maybe now that Daniel's back, I should support him this weekend. Not this weekend, Barcelona, middle of June. What will we do? Will we do Fantasy League before I go back onto the Riddle? If none of yous are on it, you're all more than welcome to join. The code, I should put the code in the description, but if I forget, just ask me. And I will. Honestly, it's not too late to join because I'm really bad at it. I don't like changing my team. I like to pick a team and I like to just trust those drivers will do well, which is absolutely the wrong way to play, but it's the way that I play. So I haven't checked this yet, so let's see what rank I am in it. I'm 7th and 9th. That's not too bad. That's not awful. There's only like 20 teams in it, but still. Number 1, same as last week, is bruh. It's Verstappening. Arthur Wrigley, 1,470 points. Well done, Arthur. I'm so happy for you. And second, again, same as last week, is Suki Yonoda. Ryan, 1,438 points. Quite close there. Then Suki Yonoda B team is third, also Ryan. I might just remove Ryan and Arthur from the competition so I get higher. Anyway, who's last? Let's check who's last. Last is Pegro F1 team, Irwan, with 808 points. I'm not sure who that is. But if you're watching Irwan, you're last and you need to up your game a little. Hannah Boylan, HB4 Dior3. That's a very clever name. That's the name of the week. You're 15th and you were 15th last week as well, and you're on 896 points. Up the game, Hannah, because Wings Flapping is beating you. Ruth is beating you with 1,109 points. Also, a very special happy birthday to my sister Ruth. She turned 28 on Saturday, the 18th of May. Fun fact, it's the only one of my siblings I ever wish a happy birthday to. I don't know why. So everyone say happy birthday to Ruth. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday, Ruth. See, people from all the way in Sweden have said happy birthday to you. This is actually a fun test to see if she actually watches my podcast or not, because Ruth, if you watch my podcast, text me a panda emoji and I'll know. And no one tell Ruth to text me that, okay? This is a good way to see who watches my podcast. Actually, let's just see who's watching my podcast. If you know me and you're watching my podcast, text me what emoji? Text me a duck emoji and we'll see who actually watches. Will we do the riddle of the week? Let's do the riddle of the week. Do you want to know the answer? The answer was Nino, or Giuseppe Farina, the first ever Formula 1 world champion ever with the Formula 1 season. So 1950 world champion. So here is a bit about him. Giuseppe. I need to learn how to say that name properly. Giuseppe Antonio, or Nino, which is his nickname, Farina, was born into the Farina family on October the 30th, 1906 in Turin, Italy, which I mentioned in the riddle. His father had a renowned body workshop in Turin, and his uncle founded the coach building firm of Pininfarina. So obviously he had a few expectations to join the family business, but no, he wanted to join motorsport. He studied law at the University of Turin. I also mentioned that in the riddle, but he developed that need for speed and he participated in his first race at 16 years old. Accidents seemed to mark his early career. He had a bit of a trend of crashing that sort of persisted throughout his time in Formula 1. Despite all of his academic achievements, and he had military service as well, his love for racing sort of trumped everything. He caught the eye of Enzo Ferrari, and he was recruited to drive for Scuderia Ferrari Alfa Romeo team under the mentorship of Tazio Nuvolari. And he became the Italian champion in 1938. So this was obviously before the Formula 1 actual championship series, which started in the 1950s. So his partnership with Alfa Romeo led to numerous victories, including his first ever Formula 1 championship race in 1950 at the British Grand Prix. Farina's driving style, which was characterised by his elegance on track and his precision, earned him the nickname the Gentleman of Turin. I think I'm pronouncing Turin right, am I? I'm not Italian, guys, so I'm not too sure. He was involved in quite a few fatal accidents throughout his career. He had quite a few injuries. He got a serious burn injury in Monza in 1954 as well. But he kept going. He propelled, as they did, to success back in those days. And yeah, he was the victory of the 1950 Formula 1 World Champion. So after he retired, he was still involved in the automotive industry. He worked with Alfa Romeo and Jaguar distributors. But unfortunately, he actually lost his life in a car crash on his way to a track in the Alps. He crashed and he was killed instantly. He wasn't driving at that race, but I think he was just doing some work behind the scenes. I actually think there was a movie going on, the Grand Prix movie, and he was going there to be like with his actor or as like the stunt or whatever, something like that. And he died. He drove for Alfa Romeo and Ferrari in Formula 1. And he and Mike Hawthorne, who was the 1958 potentially world champion, 1958, I think 57 was Fangio. 58, he won Spa 24 Hours. That was in 1953. First ever world champion, Giuseppe Farina. So that might be a question in a quiz. So he might be important to remember. Did you know that? Do you like Farina? I like Farina. I think he's an interesting character from Formula 1. Anyway, that's all I have to talk about today. We have Monaco straight away this weekend. Monaco, I love the atmosphere of Monaco. I'd absolutely adore to go to Monaco race. Probably not the most interesting one to watch sitting at home, but it could be. But we never know. You never know in Formula 1. It could be the most exciting race ever. It's Charles Leclerc's home Grand Prix. He is going to be bringing the game. And I hope Charles does well, potentially wins his home Grand Prix. Anyway, I'll see you to review the Monaco Grand Prix next weekend. Hopefully we'll have a lot to talk about. Goodbye. Thanks for listening today.